Just as a disclaimer, we want you to know that some of the movies that we will be reviewing were shot in a different time and era where people of race and sex were not treated equally. We understand this and hope you do too. The movies or anything that happened on the sets are not the views of this podcast or what this show is intended to be all about.
Exactly. And we want to give due diligence in presenting the movie and not the views of the cast or directors or anyone involved. But we also feel it's necessary to let the audience know some of the background information to get a feel for what was happening at the time of shooting the film. Again, we hope you understand that we do not agree with everything that went on, and we just want to give out the information. And with that being said, hope you enjoy the show.
There's a podcast that lies between the imagination of two simple-minded earthlings. Travel with these two longtime friends, Jimbo and 80s E, as they attempt to explore the fifth dimension. Follow along with them as they take the key and unlock the door to the vast space between shadow and substance. This podcast is one of trivia, of insight, and of sounds and ideas from one of the greatest television shows ever produced. You are embarking on a timeless journey. There is your signpost up ahead. You are entering the tragedy of cinema's Twilight Zone.
You're looking at a species of flimsy little two-legged animal with extremely small heads, whose name is man. Warren Markison, age 35. Samuel A. Conrad, age 31.
Hey, let's get ready, Sam. We've only got a couple of hours.
They're taking a highway into space. Man unshackling himself and sending his tiny groping fingers up into the unknown. Their destination is Mars. And in just a moment, we'll land there with them.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Tragedy of Cinema, the Twilight Zone series. I'm your host, Jimbo, and once again, I'm joined by my good friend and colleague, 80Z. 80Z, how you doing today?
80Z is here, and he is back in the fifth dimension. It is, I'm knee-deep in snow.
Frozen fifth dimension now.
Frozen tundra fifth dimension. We could go on and on about that. Hope everybody's doing all right out there, and they're safe and sound. I know, Jimbo.
Well,
Go ahead.
This is definitely a remote podcast because I am in a hotel in Louisville, Kentucky, while Eric's back in our hometown of Indiana, in Indianapolis. So this is definitely a remote episode. And as you can tell, we're obviously doing this ahead of time before it gets released. So it's probably sunny the day you're listening to this. So, but yes, here we are, episode 25 of the Twilight Zone from season 1. People are alike all over. There is some very interesting facts behind this and some real life discussion that we'll talk about. So I don't want to get into it right now, but we'll go ahead and let Eric take it away. Eric?
All right. People are alike all over. This is the Twilight Zone episode number 25 from season 1. It was directed by Mitchell Leeson. And I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And the teleplay, of course, was by Rod Serling. And it's actually based on a book called Brothers Beyond the Void by Paul W. Fairman. And first broadcast on March 25th, 1960. And the total production cost for this episode was $55,454.64. And when we adjust that for inflation, we're looking at, in today's dollars, we're looking at about $484,874.01. So I believe this particular episode was one of the top 2 most expensive episodes in at least season 1, maybe the entire series. Jimbo?
Actually, a very interesting thing that I found is that there was the book, obviously, but Serling really wanted to do an adaptation of this for the Twilight Zone for any price and by any means necessary, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, right.
But the screen rights were eventually purchased, the most costly of the season, at $2,500. Additional costs included the $2,250 fee Serling received for drafting the teleplay, the $360.10 for secretarial fees, and Serling's $750 per script supervision fee as agreed upon under his contract. So the total was $5,860.10. This is the second most expensive story was The Hitchhiker, which we've already covered, which totaled $5,204.
Yeah, so obviously this was something that he really was, he wanted, and he was willing to pay. So that would explain why the production costs were so high for this particular episode for script alone. I mean, was that, would you say $25,000 when you include all the fees?
Let's see here. It was 2,500 for the screen rights. That was for the screen rights. And then another $2,250 fee for Serling received for drafting the teleplay. So he had to make the teleplay up top of that. So it was like $5,860.10 for the whole cost or whatever.
Right. So that's a huge chunk of their overall budget there in the scripts. So yeah, definitely one that he was very impressed upon to make and to put on TV. Jimbo, did you want to go ahead with the cast next, or?
Sure. This has a pretty famous actor in it, Roddy McDowall, who plays Sam Conrad. He's most notably known for Planet of the Apes, where he played Cornelius, but he was also in Fright Night, where he starred as Peter Vincent. You had Susan Oliver as Tina. She was in Star Trek The Original Series as Venna. Paul Comey as Warren Markison. He was in Howard the Duck as Dr. Chapman. I know, one of Eric's favorite movies. You had Byron Morrow, who plays the first Martian. Yes, this is a Martian episode, so get ready for it. He was in Star Trek The Original Series as Admiral Comac. Vic Perrin as the second Martian. He was done a lot of voiceovers and cartoons and stuff. I know he'd done like one of the Scooby-Doos and stuff like that. And then you had Vernon Gray as the third Martian. So, Eric, that's your cast.
All right. How many folks there? About 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. About 6 main roles in the cast there. I'm going to read a little bit of the plot here as we move along in the episode. The plot is basically a rocket piloted by 2 astronauts, which I think in the first adaptation there was only one astronaut that actually went to Mars, and there are 2 astronauts that have a conversation, but actually only one went in the book Brothers from the Beyond, or Brothers Beyond the Void. I'm sorry, I misquoted that, but I think Rod adapted the teleplay to incorporate 2 astronauts, but the 2 astronauts head out on a mission to Mars. One of them, Markison, is a positive thinker who believes that all people are alike all over. And let's hear from Markison himself right here, and he'll tell us what the theme of this entire episode is.
But I've got a philosophy about people. I mean all people, Sam. They're the same all over. Well, I'm sure that when God made human beings, he developed them from a fixed formula. They'd be the same here on Earth as in the furthest reaches of space. People on Mars, wherever they're able to exist, they'd be the same.
Okay, so you heard from Markison, and he really gives us his philosophical viewpoint and the namesake for this actual episode. The other astronaut in our story is Conrad. And Conrad has a more cynical view of human implanetary nature. The impact of the landing on Mars is so severe that Markison is critically injured. And knowing that he is dying, Markison pleads with Conrad to open the door of their ship so that he can at least see that for which he has given his life. And Conrad refuses, still fearful of what may await him outside as Markison dies. And now alone, Conrad hears a rhythmic sound reverberating upon the ship's hull. Expecting some unamiable evil, his apprehension turns to joy when he opens the hatch and sees Martians that indeed appear to be human and have mind-reading abilities and give the impression of being most amicable, especially the beautiful Tina, who welcomes and reassures him. That was interesting too, Jimbo. Like, you remember that one line where Tina says, "I promise you, no one will hurt you. No one will hurt you." And, that kind of stuck out to me as we move along.
Well,
early in the episode.
I think what was really interesting about this is that when he finally gets out of the hatch or whatever. Number one, they know who he is, but number two, he's communicating and talking with them because he's like, "How do you know English?" And they're like, You're speaking our language subconsciously."
Right.
So I thought that was very well interesting point of this episode too.
Yeah, they have some sort of like telekinetic power, and that comes up later in the episode too, where when they build the house for him, and we'll get to that in a second here in the plot. But when they go to build the house for him, one of the Martians says, "Well, because Conrad asked him, well, how did you know how to do all this?" And he said, "Well, we basically mapped your mind. Your thoughts are very clear and like concise, and so we built it by basically scanning your mind." So I thought that was pretty interesting. So let me go back to where I left off here. So Tina, she welcomes him and she reassures him. And the hospitable locals lead their honored guest to his residence. And I just talked about that a little bit. An interior living space furnished precisely in the same manner as one on Earth, albeit a living space in the 1960s middle era of middle-class America. Conrad relaxes, but soon discovers that his room is windowless and the doors cannot be opened. This is the start of the twist in the episode. One of the walls slides upward, and Conrad realizes that he has become a caged exhibit in a Martian alien zoo. And Conrad picks up a sign that says "Earth creature in his native habitat," and throws it on the floor as Tina tearfully leaves. In the episode's closing lines, Conrad grips the bars and yells to the heavens, Marcuson, you were right. You were right. People are alike. People are alike everywhere." And that's just a quick summary of the plot. And we'll work back through the episode and kind of highlight some things as we go along. Jimbo, do you have any trivia or things that actually stuck out to you that you have written down?
I do, but one of the first things I'd like to talk about is the fence at the very beginning, the barbed wire fence, where you see Marcus and Conrad discussing their future of leaving Earth or whatever in the opening scene, is the same featured in the opening scene of Third from the Sun.
Right.
In the former episode, as Sturka left the planet, an exit-only sign behind one of the security guards was reused for the opening shot of this Twilight Zone adventure, repositioned while the no smoking sign remained where it was. Also, the exterior of the Martian landscape was actually the huge painted cyclorama of the desert landscape of Alter 4, which was originally created for, once again, Forbidden Planet, which we're going to have to just watch that and do an episode on that, I think, because there's so many ties back to this of each episode.
I'm saying.
And it took up the entire soundstage at MGM, so I thought that was very well interesting. It's always interesting how many times that they reuse props.
Right.
And backgrounds from even movies, and not even that, but other episodes of the Twilight Zone. Like we've talked about the staircase that shows up in so many of these episodes in season 1, and everything else.
Just a question real quick here. The Pac-Man symbols in the background in the scene, were they also from inside the ship? Were they also from Forbidden Planet? I thought I read that. I thought I read that somewhere, or they were from another. They were an adaptation from another like 1950s sci-fi movie that we've mentioned several times. If it wasn't for the Forbidden Planet, I know I read it somewhere, but
it says the interior of the wrecked ship included registered gauges in the background, described as a duplicate of the Paramount Studio logo, which were originally props from the Krell Laboratory from the 1956 motion picture, The Forbidden Planet.
There you go.
So, Eric, I'm going to have to buy that, and we're going to have to watch that.
I guess. I mean, it's everywhere here. This also, I just have a quick note that this was, I wrote down in my notes that this really has a Star Trek-esque type theme, and there's a really good reason for that, because the original pilot of Star Trek, the title was called The Cage. It was later reworked into a 2-part episode called The Menagerie, included plot points similar to that which touched upon this episode, particularly the aspect of humans being put on display for study. Coincidentally, the pilot also co-starred Susan Oliver, who plays Tina in this Twilight Zone episode. She also was in a similar role and had the task of making the captive feel more at ease. So she really got typecast for this role, I guess, and she was really good at delivering. So that was kind of interesting to see why it had such the Star Trek-esque feel. It really had that feel. If you look at the costumes, the togas, obviously that was kind of a cliched Martian type costume and get up in the 1960s sci-fi. The beautiful leading lady, who is the alien, and that of course is Tina, and the backdrop, and of course the spaceship and all the props and stuff. That kind of really, it kind of pulls you into that feeling of a Star Trek type episode. But I just thought that was interesting.
Well, not only that, but Paul Comey and Roddy McDowall became really good friends on this episode too. I thought that was really cool too, that they actually became friends just from working on the Twilight Zone together. But also back to Susan Oliver, she recalled an issue of Starlog that this was lots of fun. Roddy used to take me to lunch at MGM. He had practically grown up there. He used to do all these hilarious impressions of big movie moguls. And she also said about Rod Serling that he was very special and that he was a nice, gentle man. So I thought that was very. She said he was very modest and self-effacing. So I thought that was very well an insight to Rod Serling's character outside of the movies too.
Yeah,
or TV show.
Yeah. I read some other things. You may have it. I don't want to steal your thunder, Jimbo, but about Susan Oliver. I don't know if you have anything down about her.
No, go for it.
I didn't really write a bio, but she was a really accomplished. Pilot outside. She actually flew a couple missions, and she was really like a pioneer as a airline pilot. She accomplished a lot of things outside of acting, and I don't have all of the notes, but she led a pretty interesting life outside of acting. Not to mention that she was very attractive and beautiful actress and did very well in the two episodes that I. Whether it be Star Trek or the Twilight Zone, but I just thought that was interesting that she was very accomplished outside of acting.
Now, do you think she got inspiration from Amelia Earhart?
I don't know. That'd be a good question. That'd be something that would be very interesting to read. But it was like a transcontinental flight, I think, where I read somewhere that she was part of. I think it was called like a powder puff team or something like that. And she was a fearless pilot. Some of these things that I read about her, and she broke some world records, and I can't recall it all now, but it was very interesting to read about her. And then also just a little bit about Roddy McDowall, our main character here. He was born in Herne Hill, London, England, and he was born to Winifred Lucinda Cochrane, an Irish-born aspiring actress, and Thomas Andrew McDowall, a merchant seaman. And Roddy was enrolled in elocution courses at age 5, and by age 10, he had appeared in his first film, and it was entitled Murder in the Family in 1938. And he actually co-starred with someone that our listeners might recognize. He co-starred with a lady by the name of Jessica Tandy in that movie. And his mother brought Rowdy. His mother brought Roddy and his sister to the U.S. at the beginning of World War II, and he began to get other roles in other films. One of his most notable, roles was in a John Ford movie called How Green Was My Valley, and that was in 1941. That movie actually won an Oscar in 1941. I've never seen How Green Was My Valley. Jimbo, you any idea what that? No,
nope, never even heard.
Apparently, it was a good movie. It won an Oscar. And here's an interesting fact. Maybe Roddy wishes it wasn't in his history, but in 1974. I'm skipping ahead here, several years, several decades. The FBI raided his home and seized his collection of films and television series during an investigation of copyright infringement. And so just buyer beware, that little FBI symbol that you see at the beginning of, what started in the 80s with the videotapes and what you see in front of movies now, you might have Roddy McDowall to thank for that, because the FBI seized all of this private collection that he had, and it actually consisted of 160 16-millimeter prints and over 1,000 video cassettes. The value of the films was conservatively, at this time, assessed at $5 million by representatives of the movie industry. The actor was not charged and agreed to cooperate with the FBI. Jimbo, do you?
Well, that's very interesting, because you said that they seized 16-millimeter prints.
Yeah, and he had
so
videotape
you're talking
too.
about the actual. You're talking about the actual.
Yeah,
the reels.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So some of that probably had a lot of value to it. I mean, if he had something like the Wizard of Oz in the can or something like that, or what is it, the Citizen Kane? I mean, was he just a collector of movies, or was it his movies that he had? That's what I didn't understand, because you said his collection. So I didn't know of his TV shows. So I didn't know if it was the movies and TV shows that he had been in, or if it was a grander scheme of everything.
No,
You know what I'm
I
saying?
think it was a grander scheme. And then let me read on a little bit. McDowell told the FBI that he had transferred many films to videotape in order to conserve space. And because tape was longer lasting than film, and subsequently had sold or traded the prints, plus other prints of movies that he had lost interest in, to other collectors. So basically he was transferring it to videotape, it sounds like, and then he would, use it as he saw fit. And if he got tired of it, he would trade it or give it or sell it to someone.
So it's kind of like taking your DVD collection and putting it all digitally now, basically.
Yeah, exactly. He said that he collected the films due to his love for cinema and to help protect the movie's heritage. McDowell also said that he was being in possession of prints of his own films allowed him to study his acting and improve his craft. So his explanation was, look, I put all these films on videotape, and I want to study so I can enhance and improve my craft by, going back and studying.
He's actually studying his own movies, according to that.
Exactly.
He's watching his own performances.
Yep. And so he explained that he believed that he was not in violation of copyright, as he was not showing the film for profit, nor trying to make a profit when selling his prints, as he charged only what he remembered the price he himself paid. So he's saying, look, yeah, I sold some of them, but I only sold them for what I paid for them, so it's basically the transaction's a wash. And I guess, let me read down here, he wasn't the only one. McDowell was forthcoming about individuals that he had dealt with on the black market, and also named Rock Hudson, Dick Martin, and Mel Torme as other celebrities with film collections. So he kind of threw those guys under the bus a little bit with the FBI.
If I'm the FBI and he uses the term black market, guess what? Guilty. That's all I'm saying.
So apparently the FBI, it looks like from this little snippet here, that the FBI kind of had an arrangement with him. And, they're like, look, you tell us what you got, what it's worth, and, so on and so forth. And we won't charge you with a copyright infringement crime, but you got to become, forthcoming with other people that you've dealt business. You got to give us information, basically, which is kind of what the FBI does anyway. But enough about Roddy McDowall. Jimbo, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I do. Go ahead and keep talking for a second. I need to look this up real quick.
Sure.
I had it on my phone, but I'm obviously Skyping with you. So
yeah, no problem.
I need to pull it up here so I can make sure I got my facts straight real quick.
Let me just read a little bit of trivia from the episode. Markison mentions that in the episode that they traveled 35 million miles to Mars. And again, we've touched on this before. Obviously, the space program was in its infancy. This is in 1960. So the numbers that we've given out in other episodes as we talk about space travel, of course, they're going to be rough estimates, and they may not always be 100% accurate. The distance between Earth and Mars ranges between 36 million and 250 million miles, due to both having slightly elliptical orbits and different lengths of time to orbit the sun. So I thought that was interesting, that it could be from 36 million miles to 256 million miles, or 250 million miles. That's a huge difference just when you take into account the different elliptical orbits that both planets have. You send a spaceship out from Earth to Mars, And, it might be 35 million miles if you hit it right. It might be 250 million miles, depending where they are in their orbits around the sun and how far apart or how close they are in those orbits. I thought that was kind of an interesting piece of trivia. Did you find it, Jimbo?
All right. Yeah, I found it. So this is the story. This is going to be a tough read for me because it shows how evil men can be. So we all know it, if you've watched this episode, that at the end Sam Conrad is in the zoo attraction due to him being declared an alien, if you will, on Mars. In real life, a gentleman by the name of Ota Benga, Otabenga, who was a 4'11" African American man, was put on display at the Bronx Zoo in New York in 1906.
Yeah.
There was monkeys in there with him. Basically, he went out on an elephant hunt, and when he came back, his entire family had been slaughtered. And he was picked up, and
so he's basically kidnapped. Right?
Yeah. Yes. Let me see. Let me find the rest of it. So basically, he was sold. He was picked up by a missionary man who was in contract with somebody back in the States to bring back a group of pygmies or whatever, and he was sold for, I believe it said, a pound of salt, or traded for a pound of salt and like a spool of cloth or something.
Wow.
So he brought him back to the States with, like, I believe 3 or 4 other gentlemen. And they actually went traveling around. I believe it was at the World's Fair. And now some of this is from memory. I'm trying to pull this up. I don't have the same article in front of me that I was reading last night, so bear with me. So then there was a group of... he got basically taken to New York, and he got a job with the zoo where he would be helping feed and clean the animals and all that. Well, they finally went into the monkey cage or whatever, and if you look online, if you look up the Otabenga, you'll see the picture of him like holding some monkeys and stuff. And but somebody seen him in there cleaning one day, and he became a crowd attraction. Like the crowd just gathered around. So they exploited his stature to make money in that market. Well, there was another group of Christian men, clergy, who basically adopted him and pulled him out of there. And he went, and they took him out of there. So basically he became a free man. He went back to the Congo, where he was from. And it was only a few short... he decided that he didn't fit in over there, so he came back to America. And it was only a few short years later, I believe he was only 33, I think, or in 1933, one of the two, that he committed suicide. Because basically from a broken heart and from, just being the way he was treated. Now, I say that because that fits in with the title of this episode, that people are like all over. Today, we still see racism. We still see people treated differently from how they look, how they are. People are different. But they still have the same people, have the same actions towards other people who are not of the same race, same color, everything else. So I thought that was very heartfelt and very eye-opening. So when I watched this movie, I actually felt really, really bad. So, Eric? Go ahead.
I was vaguely familiar with the story that you just told. I had read it in connection with the people in the zoo, or maybe even evolutionary theorists at the time, used him as an exploitation or a verification to support their thinking on evolution, the theory of evolution. They used him as kind of a prop in order to sort of support their to spread the theory of evolution in the early 1900s. Yeah.
Well, and like even the sign that we see in the episode, he had a sign outside of the cage, and it said, "The African pygmy Otabenga, age 23 years old, or 23 years, height 4 foot 11 inches, weight 103 pounds, brought from the Kasai River, it's Kasai River, Congo Free State, South Central Africa." So once you look at this, and I don't know if Rod Serling meant to do this.
Right.
I kind of think he was probably familiar with
Sure.
it, and I think just the way that Rod Serling went through episodes, and he was very meticulous, and he was thinking of things way beyond. And I wonder if that is why, one of the reasons why, that he wanted the rights to make something like this episode and pay such a high price, is to get this message out there.
That's good. That's a good point.
I don't think it's behind the realm of possibility. But I just wanted to bring attention to that too. So if people aren't familiar with that they read up on that story and get familiar with it, and you can draw conclusions from that to today's standards by any means. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to throw that out there. I thought that was very, very interesting, because I went on a deep dive after I got off work this morning for about an hour or two, just reading about him, and man, my heart was breaking for the guy.
Yeah.
And just to be treated so badly that you had to end up taking your own life, I said, no, but nobody deserves that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that out there, because it's just a message that needs to be heard. So I wanted to make sure we threw that out there in this podcast.
Yeah. That's
A couple of errors that we see in this movie. Several boom mics are seen at several different times, or the shadow of them. When Conrad walks into the living room after banging on the front door, you can see the shadow of the boom mic and its operator.
Okay.
As Conrad roots through the shambles of the ship just after crashing to Mars, a boom mic shadow is visible. Another goof, if you will, when everyone enters the house, tape can be seen on the floor so the actors can hit their marks.
okay.
When there's some at the end when squeezing the bars of the cell, the bars move inward and up and down. And there's something that people call an error or goof, but you can make the argument. So when Conrad tries to open the door exiting his new dwelling, he grabs the front door handle and pulls and pushes on it several times. When he does, you can see the adjoining wall move back and forth,
I saw that.
seeming to indicate it is part of a set.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Not an actual wall. However, since the Martians slapped that structure together pretty much overnight, you can say it's just a fake dwelling in a zoo, so there's every reason it would be flimsy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, so other than that, let me see if I have anything else real quick. Eric, you got anything else?
Just in questions and observations, we go back to the spaceship as it crashed landed, and Conrad gives Marcuson that injection. Just something that popped in my mind is really like, what do you think that was? Do you think it was pain meds or sleeping aid? Because when he wakes up from it, he says something funny. When I looked this up a little bit on like some medical websites, he says, I feel like I'm busted up inside or something like that, and I might have, basically saying I got internal bleeding. And I'm thinking, well, how would
He did say, he said, I'm bleeding on the inside, I can feel it. I do believe this is exact words.
Okay, so and I'm like, well, how would you know if you had internal bleeding? And I guess there are symptoms when I went back and looked it up online.
Right.
One of which, like vomiting, skin discoloration, just a few examples. But I that struck me when I saw that. I was like, well, how would he know they had internal bleeding? Because you hear about people all the time dying from internal bleeding, and they get to the hospital too late because they don't know. But he innately knew that he had internal bleeding, and I thought, well, I was just wondering what the injection was. Maybe it was to calm him down or to help him to sleep, or pain meds or something like that for Marcuson. But that was just a little thing that stuck out.
Here's my observation and question to you. When he exits the ship, this is Conrad.
Right.
They go in and grab the body of the other astronaut, right? And they say what, they were going to bury him?
Yeah, they do. They say they're going to bury your friend.
Okay. My thing is, if they went through the length of caging this guy, I don't think they ever buried him. I think they probably dissected him.
Possibly.
Maybe did a little.
Yep.
I think they probably would have, because let's think about it. If an alien ship crashed on this Earth,
Area 51.
as Area 51, right? And there was a dead alien and there was a live alien. I think us as humans would do the exact same thing. We would put the alien on exhibit somewhere once the world was ready to handle that kind of information. And I think that the other one would be dissected and to see how different they are than humans. and everything else. And I thought that was another really, really interesting thought that I had as I watched this episode, because I'm like, especially at the end when the twist came, I was like, there is no way that they just buried this guy. There's just no way.
No.
You know what I mean?
That's a good...
Maybe once they were done with him, maybe.
Yeah, that was a good observation. My other observation that I wrote down was Marcuson's optimism that people are just like us remains even until his death, but it ultimately leads to Conrad's captivity. So that positive outlook, because Conrad is very cynical and skeptical in the beginning, but Marcuson's positive attitude sort of wins him over, especially when he meets the Martians initially, and they seem really nice. Obviously, it's a whole ruse to deceive him so that they could put him in captivity. But because he finally believes kind of Marcuson's, philosophy, it ends up costing him his freedom, and he's in captivity because of it.
But see, you can take that two ways. One, and I don't know if you caught it. Well, you mentioned it earlier, but when Tina sees him in the cage, what does she do? She looks like she's about to cry, and she walks away.
She's very conflicted.
So you could take you could take that as people are like all over with emotions like that.
Yep.
You can take it the other way, where Marcuson was like, yeah, people are like all over. They're curious, they're generally good people. All that. So you could take it from that perspective. You could take it from Conrad's, because Conrad was like, man, they're people are not alike all over. They're different, which that makes them different, which makes them alike all over too. So basically that they're evil and will do things, like he didn't want to leave the ship because we don't know what's out there. So the fear of the unknown. So you could take it from his, that people are alike all over. So I think there's different aspects of people are alike all over in this episode that you can draw from Tina having the emotions, from the aliens, basically, hey, we want to see what this guy knows or what he does in his natural habitat. Same thing they would do to us if we were caught by an earthling. You could take it from Marcuson's perspective, or you could take it from Conrad's perspective. I think there's different ways you could look at the people are like all over just from this episode.
Yeah, I think finally, I don't know. I think in the finality of it all, though, we're left with Conrad's viewpoint. I think we're left with, if man is left to his own devices, or Martians in this matter, they're going to do exactly what we as human beings do to other human beings, even, not even aliens. We're going to do the same things to them. I mean, you just with the, what's his name again? The African man,
Oda Benga.
Yeah, I didn't want to mispronounce it. And we see that in the life of Oda Benga, that human beings not only do horrible things to aliens in this case, or vice versa, but we do it to our own human beings. And I think we're kind of left with that in his final exasperated cry. People are alike everywhere.
Right. Do you think that they got the idea of putting him in the zoo from their own human subconscious, or do you think they already knew about
the
it?
Martians? Did they subconsciously wanted to do it? I don't know.
From the humans.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Do you think they got that idea from the humans, the whole zoo aspect from the human mind?
Well, that's good. That's good that you pulled that out. I hadn't even thought about that. Very possibly, yeah, because he can map obviously the Martians can map the minds of the humans, and yeah, I mean that would be a good explanation of how they got the idea. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. But one other, just this isn't as deep of a dive, but just a little observation too that why did Conrad dab the whiskey behind his ears? Did you notice that? Like, he makes his drink and he's happy and he has his cigarette, and then I was like, that's weird. I've never really seen somebody do that. And then I did a little bit of a deep dive about it. And
actually, they do that a lot in older movies.
Do they really? I hadn't noticed.
If you've ever watched it, it's kind of like perfume. It's a cologne. You know what I mean?
I hadn't noticed that before, and I was like, that's kind of strange. So I looked it up, and I guess it's all about the sight, smell, and sound and touch. It's kind of connecting, I guess, with like the whiskey on a cerebral, or to heighten the senses. Sometimes people take expensive, I think it was scotch in this episode, but scotch or whiskey, and they'll dab it behind their ears to sort of get the fuller experience of all of the senses. I was like, wow, I didn't know that, because it looked very strange to me when I first saw it. I was like, what is he doing?
Right. Something else real quick is the living room set is the same one seen in the Twilight Zone, Third from the Sun. It's also a readdressed version of George's living room from The Time Machine in 1960. So I wanted to make sure I threw that in there. So Eric, what did you think of this episode?
I thought it was good. Again, I don't think it made I have my list here. I don't think it made my top 10 list. I thought it was this one was pretty deep and thought-provoking, obviously on many different levels, from the outside looking in. Of course, that's what makes the Twilight Zone so great, is these timeless like truths or philosophies and things they kind of hold up. They're not afraid to touch on. He wasn't afraid to touch on sensitive subjects, and I think he fought to not let other people in the industry, outsiders, people who had all the money and controlled a lot of the production, and even sponsors. He wouldn't allow the sponsors to strip away the main thrust and theory and philosophy that he had going into these episodes. And Rod fought for those things, and he fought for the integrity, and I think it really shows, and I think that's why these episodes, they stand the test of time, because he did all those things early on. And
right. Yeah, it was a Twilight Zone. It had the Twilight Zone twist in it, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to crack my top 10, but it was really well done. But once you start looking at some of the other stuff that had happened in history, like with Oda Benga, for example, it really opens your eyes, and it makes me appreciate Rod Serling that much more from just the fact that he may not have even known about it. I'm sure he had to have known about it. I mean, I'm sure he had to. It's not just a story. Unless the people that wrote that short story knew about it, and that's why they wrote theirs, you know what I mean? But, I mean, once you see that, and then you see the ending of that, then it really, really hits home. It just makes you think a lot more than it's just a Twilight Zone episode, that there really was a really good message in this episode, and I really like that.
Yep.
And I really appreciate that. Well, this episode's coming down to a close. The next episode 26, will be Execution, I do believe is the name of it. I won't ruin anything, but I think we're probably going to have a difference of opinion on this one.
Are we?
So.
You know me and the time travel episodes. I love them. I love them all.
I
even
know
if they're poorly done.
You're Back to the Future geek.
Yeah.
I watched Back to the Future 2 the other day at work. Terrible movie. Well, but we'll talk about that another time.
I would say that's the more inferior movie in the trilogy.
Although it has probably the best scenes with the hoverboard. I always wanted a hoverboard.
Of course.
Remember in grade school we all wanted that hoverboard.
Of course, who didn't?
Well, this episode's coming to a close, and that's a wrap. Eric, take it away.
And cut.
Species of animal brought back alive. Interesting similarity in physical characteristics to human beings. In head, trunk, arms, legs, hands, feet. Very tiny, undeveloped brain. Comes from primitive planet named Earth. Calls himself Samuel Conrad. And he will remain here in his cage with the running water and the electricity and the central heat as long as he lives. Samuel Conrad has found the Twilight Zone.